You're listening to Dumpster Diving with
Janice.
and Jane. And we have a special guest today. I'm going to let Janice introduce her since I am brand new to Miss Rose. So I would love to be introduced and let's chat. This is great. I love it.
I'm going to take issue right out of the gate because before we came on to this recording, Jane was, Jane was saying to Rose, like, listen, it's very informal, right? This is really casual. We don't even know what questions we're going to ask. And I want the world to know that I have a sticky note with questions on it. You know how sometimes when you were growing up, maybe you had an imaginary friend? I have an imaginary producer for our show. I haven't introduced to him yet, but he's here and he exists and he provided this sticky note of questions for me this morning. So we're good. We're totally legit. I want to be clear.
I need to insert myself here real quick. As co-owner, producer, co-host, whatever of the show. I don't think this was run by me, this imaginary producer. I
don't think that's how it works. I think they just show up and you deal. And that's how that goes.
Is that
anyway,
in your head work?
We can fight offline. But everybody meet my dear friend Rose Chang. Rose is just an incredible person, and like a lot of us, she's a mom, and she's also a scientist, and she runs her own business. It's no big deal. Like it's just, it's whatever. She's juggling all the big things. It's not a big deal. But Rose, we are so excited to have you, and so thrilled that you're joining us. And I'm gonna tell everybody our topic, but we made you pause before we came on to the recording because you were saying some really amazing thing that the world needs to hear. So if you would go ahead and pick up right there.
I'm just telling everyone, all the audience right now, that I'm very starstruck right now because I listen to the podcast every week, and now I feel like I'm meeting like two superstars.
Oh, that is so
it's great. It's great to just finally when I listen to your podcast, I talk to myself sometimes because I answer questions that you ask your guests, and I listen to you guys every Saturday when I clean the house and the kitchen, and it's just the best time to listen. And I have favorites. The Halloween was my favorite one.
I love that.
That was my favorite one. The scary story about the clothes that were laid out.
Oh my God, yes.
It scared the crap out of her. She and I chatted after that. She was like, that scared the crap out of me. Meanwhile, by the way, you saying you're starstruck is just as funny the second time as it was the first time. So
right.
Now we know. Jane and I often wonder about like who are the 5 people who seem to always listen to us, and now we know who one of them is. So we're gonna chip away at this. We're gonna have a list, Jane, at some point of all those people.
Yeah,
I love it. But it also makes me feel guilty because, over the last month, we've had a little bit of a lull because of some things that have been happening in our lives. And I'm like, oh, damn, we let Rose down, man. There wasn't a new episode. So we got to be better. We're going to be better.
You are the new episode. That's how we're making up for it.
That's right. Exactly. We're bringing in our biggest listener and best fan. I love it.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So Rose, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Anything that you feel like would be great for our listeners to know as we think about this. Sorry, go ahead, Jane.
Share something real quick with you too, because Rose, you'll know exactly where I'm going with this in a second, and I think it'll be a treasure for you too because you do listen to every episode. So I want to share a quick story. So last weekend I took a train down to San Diego, rented a U-Haul, spent the night at my sister Janice's house. Grabbed the U-Haul Sunday morning, picked up the couches. She gifted me 2 couches, and I brought them home. It was a fiasco getting them into the home and all those things. And because she gave me such a gracious gift, me and my daughters, her nieces, I'm gonna bring it back around town and gift you the picture that Uncle Bruce was talking about with Grandma.
Oh, okay.
Real quick. Okay. And look what I found.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Wow.
Isn't that cool? But guess what? I added this to our drive, and now you have all these pictures to look at.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing, Jane.
So I found the file, and I decided to upload it to our drive so you can see all the pictures that I have access to.
Wow.
So, this is our grandma. Look at her fancy pants. I'm going to show you one of my favorites. And for everybody on YouTube, This is one of my favorite pictures.
Oh, look at
That's
that.
beautiful.
Wow.
Isn't it cool with the
So
light
classic.
behind it? It's so
Wow.
sexy. Look at our
I was
grandma.
gonna say that's like the older version of the like the boudoir pictures, or
Yeah.
not
Yeah. This is
like
like,
Ah,
that you can get.
yeah, because I think she was born
Yeah.
in 19, I think she was born in 1910. So this had to
wow.
have been like, late 20s, maybe, I don't know.
Wow.
Seeing that she might be 18, 19, 20. So, but yeah,
That
and
is
then this is
every
our,
woman needs a picture of herself like that.
right?
Seriously. Like
Right.
just forever. Oh, anyway.
This is our
And
dad
that's
as
our
a young
dad.
man,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
just
Some of
wanted
these
to,
I've seen. Yeah.
yeah,
Some of these
some of
I've
them
seen
probably
from Kurt
seen.
or from Dylan.
Yeah, but there's some cute candid ones in here where,
Oh,
she's standing on the countertop. Oh, with Kim. This is Kim and
oh
that's
my gosh.
and they're just putting stuff away. Like the coolest little picture. So
Great.
that's my gift to you for the couches. I
Thank
found the file and
you.
uploaded it so you and Joe and the kids
Uh,
will look at it later. So
I love it. You know, we're building up our so we don't have a lot of pictures of the family around the house, but going up our steps, there's what Joe likes to call the wall of shame, and it's a baby picture of each of our 6 kids in
Yeah.
chronological order. And then the wall to the right of it is empty, and we're gonna add like, now we have grandbabies, and we're gonna start to add. And so Joe's gonna build me like those little like ledge shelves, so because rather than
Okay.
hang a bunch of pictures on
Grandma.
the wall,
it's,
right,
yeah.
I can move them around, and I'm definitely going to be putting one of those of her up there because it's just so special. Thank you for
It,
that, sister.
yes, you're
Appreciate it.
welcome. Okay,
Oh,
Rose,
Oh,
it's all
all
you,
right.
girl. But I knew that you would like that too because I know you listen to
Yeah.
the episode. So
Yeah,
love
I
that.
love just all those pictures. This watching history, it
yeah,
just
Yeah, exactly, exactly. All right, so tell us, who is Rose exactly?
yes,
oh my God. I don't know. Is this gonna be you might wanna basically as my kids call me, I'm an old person. I'm in my early 20s. No, I'm kidding. No. I'm So I am a mom of two. One is currently a senior in high school, and one is 10 years old. And, I have my loving husband. And I live in San Diego. And basically, I have my own business. Like you said earlier, I a scientist by trade. And my business, I actually consult with helping companies go and bring their drug out on market. So, when that whole um, when that whole COVID vaccine was coming out, that was basically it put my industry in the limelight. No one knew what clinical research was before COVID, and now everyone kind of knows a little bit about it, but I'm in the trenches of
Yeah.
getting drugs out on market by helping that out. So it's just not COVID vaccines, but everything, oncologies, cancer drugs, uh, all these other mental, like CNS drugs, and then also anti-infective drugs. So that was just the whole ballpark of me, I guess.
Well, it's such a great, I mean, I really appreciate you sharing that with us in detail
Yeah,
because, we almost always, when we introduce ourselves as moms first, right? And yet, and because that's such an important role that we play in the world. And yet we also do these other really amazing things. And so I love you sharing just a little bit about the company that you run, which, this isn't a side hustle, right? But folks, just for the record, this isn't a side hustle. This is like full-blown major business, and it's just incredibly impressive, and
yeah.
I'm always inspired by you, especially
Oh,
on that front. So thank you for sharing that, because we're about to talk about the mom side for the next,
yeah.
50 minutes or so, but I don't want people to lose sight of like all the things that we talk about in the next 50 minutes or so are in the context of, by the way, running your own business and trying to do all the things, right? So it's not like you
Yeah,
just got to focus on this
ex-
thing, right?
right.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
So,
So,
so the reason we asked Rose to join us today was actually quite specific because Rose is a former neighbor of mine, and we have this close knit group of 5 of us who all lived, next door to each other until a couple of us moved away. And by away, I mean like 5 miles away, not that far. So we're great friends, but But Rose, we were together recently and chatting about the fact that her daughter is a senior this year, and Jane and I have both, shepherded kids through senior year and through the college process. But what I loved about Rose's story is that it's her first time, right? Her very first time.
Yes.
And there's so many parents out there who this is going to be relatable for because they too have just navigated this for the first time. Or maybe your kid's a junior. My youngest is a junior, and you're going to be navigating this, kind of from this point forward through senior year, et cetera. But Rose was offering a little bit of a, what I'm going to call progressive take on how she navigated this process with her daughter, Maddie, this year. And so I'm hoping, Rose, that we can start with, I want you to start with like your first kind of recounting or memory of like the moment you realized, oh, wow, we're in this process now. Like we're starting this process. Was it when you visited the first school in junior year? Was it like at what point? And then I want you to talk a little bit about like how you started, right? What were your instincts out of the gate? And then we're going to talk about kind of the transformation. So let's hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, well, growing up, I did kind of everything on my own, right? And then when I decided to have kids, I said, well, I'm definitely going to take a totally different stance on that and be involved as much as possible. And I didn't realize that sometimes it could really hurt your child a little bit. So growing up, Maddie was always more of I don't want to say that she always followed everything that I told her to do. She never spoke out. She was very quiet and she'll say, okay, I'll do whatever you want to do. So the first part of your question of when did you start that whole process? And I have to be honest here, it started when she was in 7th grade.
Oh, wow.
And
My God.
yeah, that far back, because I always envisioned a child that would exceed in everything that she would do. And I wanted her to, right? And, when she said she was interested in joining Science Olympiad, I was so happy because of the fact that, that's my background and I could do this. And so they needed coaches for that club. And so I took it upon myself to be that parent, to be involved in everything that she wanted. I was room parent from the kindergarten years.
Right.
And I volunteered and I did all this. I headed committees, part of the school. And so my parents never did that growing up. And so that's where I felt that I needed to change that whole aspect. But 7th grade, she wanted to do Science Olympiad. And I was telling her exactly which clubs to join. She needed to be in gate. She needed to do this. She needed to do that. I wanted her to be involved in everything that will make her college applications exceed above all other things that I wasn't given the opportunity to. So, she continued on with that. I helped her through that process. I asked her to go ahead and join many clubs as much as possible. And she did it. She followed exactly what I wanted her to do. And then when she entered, unfortunately, the pandemic hit around 8th grade for her. So everything stopped then. And I think that was kind of when she had her aha moment. She had some time to think. She had some time to slow down in life. All the activities that we were doing, it took a pause.
They came to a screeching halt. And I mean,
I'm sorry.
it came to a screeching halt.
Oh,
And
it did.
she was so involved. I mean, I'm just thinking about her psyche, like I was so busy and all these things, and now you have nothing. Like, how do I occupy my time? Like, what the heck?
Exactly. And it was hard. And so even then I tried to push everything by doing online courses and camps, and just to keep them involved and socialized.
Right.
Back then, the friends that she had were all part of academics and clubs.
Right.
And so it was hard for her to kind of connect with people starting then, because it's probably like all the other kids. They
Right.
couldn't really, that was, I really think, the turning point
Yeah.
of who she hung out with,
Yeah.
and then what she was interested in, and then just not being involved in so much. And I have to say that it was actually nice, because I wasn't running around doing
Right.
everything
Yes.
all at once.
Like you're like, holy crap, this is amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. So I did talk to a couple of my friends, and they all agreed, the mom, this was actually a break for us.
Yeah.
But when she
Really?
went into, yeah, when she went into high school, and I have no idea why she did this, but she front loaded everything. And when I say
Yeah.
front loaded everything, she took the most challenging classes, or she signed up for the most challenging
Yeah.
classes that that maybe she shouldn't have signed up for. We're talking about AP biology,
Yeah.
Okay.
AP math, where she was taking, and and it was, she ended up not going. She took on that. We selected to do the online classes,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
or remote classes, and then when Poway went to half, I I believe they went half the year on site,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
decided to go continue remote learning. And so that AP biology, I still remember that time where she was having a hard time.
Yeah.
And, and I felt like I didn't know what to do for her. And at
Yeah.
one point, her grades were falling.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Um, and she's always been that student who was always straight A,
Yeah.
always. And so, after one of her tests, I go up to her room, I knock, and she was kind of laying down. I go, shouldn't you be in your class right now? And she kind of opened up to me and said, I didn't do well.
Yeah.
I think I failed that. And she did. So that was another point where I was just like, okay, I have to take things into my own hands. The teachers are challenged right now. She can't cry out for help. And me being
Right.
a biologist, I ended up reviewing and reading her biology books,
Oh,
Oh wow.
her
wow.
chapters that she was gonna actually go through for the next round. I would read it, and it brought back memories of my college years, and I
Yeah.
was just like, how the heck did I major in this? It's
Like what in the world?
Me.
cells and DNA, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh, this is crazy.
So I'm going to pause you for one second,
Yeah,
because I want to acknowledge something really quickly, and I don't, but I don't want to throw off your trajectory either. But like, if I'm thinking about everybody listening to this, and I'm thinking about how lucky Maddie was, and Emily, your younger daughter, right, was to have, and
yeah,
I'm sure it's true of all of our kids, to have us during
Right.
the pandemic. And I'm thinking about
yeah,
all those families who didn't have that, right? They didn't have
yeah,
parents who could do what you did. They didn't have parents for a lot of reasons, not just because like maybe they don't have the background to be able to do it effectively, but also because, they're trying to just like scrape by enough to like make sure everybody has dinner every day. And I just, we
yeah,
hear a lot in the news about the gaps that grew during the pandemic, and this is such a perfect example because
yeah,
in some families, if you had the resources, you could have your kids in these camps online and this, that, and the other. But for a lot
yeah,
of kids, it really was, they did the remote learning and that was it, right? And then they were maybe taking care of their siblings, or they were helping, figure out ways to work in order to help. So I just, you saying all this just makes me think, wow, what a huge divide, right? The pandemic
exactly.
really, really highlighted because of that. So anyway, just wanted to acknowledge that for the folks out there who are listening, thinking, "Gosh, I wish I could have done that for my kid," right? Or I wish I could have been there. But keep
Yeah,
going. You're like now
yeah,
trying to pre-study all her work for her to help her bridge
yeah,
her learning.
yeah, her learning. And so what I would do from that information is I would test her on it.
Yeah.
I would basically test her on it. And, there were certain subjects, part of that biology chapters that she wasn't getting, and I was getting frustrated.
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't be happy with her. And she would start to get that, that anxiousness
Yeah.
Right.
from me,
Right.
because I felt like she needs to keep her grades up. She needs
Well,
to go into, you know,
yeah,
the,
well, I mean,
the,
her and if you look at it from her point of view, she's done everything in her wheelhouse and willpower to make mom proud. And now she's in a moment where she can't, like, I don't think she sounded depressed, and
I,
so
yeah,
that depression kicked in. She's not doing as well. She doesn't want, she talked to you, which is great. And that tells me that you have
uh-huh,
a healthy relationship with her to where she does feel comfortable to talk to you about these things. But at the same time, you're like, I'm getting mad at you because you don't understand this or you're not getting it.
yeah.
So what a freaking, a stew pot full of different emotions and
Mhm.
everything, and we all navigated through that, whether we were good at it or bad at it. We all navigated through that for ourselves and our children. So it's such a huge thing to pause on and go, let's look at the behaviors. Let's
Yeah,
look at those parts too. So yeah, it's crazy.
right, right. Right. And so, we continued on this whole year, me reviewing this, me testing her. And if there was a part of the subject she didn't understand, she would definitely come up to me. But that's where the frustration
Yeah.
also started, because
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not a teacher. I
Not
can think
either.
about it in my brain here, but I can't articulate to, well, how old was she back then? Maybe a 15-year-old.
15. Yeah.
You get frustrated, like, why can't you get this? And then obviously I couldn't help her with her advanced math, because
Right.
I'm here at the low level of math. What plus
Oh, so you're a low level math biologist? Okay. Got it.
2 plus 2 is okay. Percentages, you got me. So,
Division one.
I yeah. So, and so that continued on. And then, I was still thinking, how should I keep her involved?
Oh
Even
my
during
gosh.
the pandemic, that was my
Yeah.
whole mind frame, because we're in high school now. Your
Yeah.
grades matter.
Right.
So, and then basically her sophomore year, they went back to school. And this was a time where I was constantly checking up on her
Oh
grades.
wow.
I just don't know if that's such a healthy thing to have online
Yeah.
portal.
Right.
It really, really, really messes with your mental as a parent. If you're that parent, which I was, when I say
Yeah.
was now, um,
It reminds me of
gosh,
like a weight loss journey. Like every day you step on the scale and you're like, damn it. Like, what am I doing? What did I eat yesterday? And so you're looking at her grades and you're like, did you even go to class yesterday? Come on, or whatever. It's so
Well,
funny.
and I tell parents all the time, it is a red flag if you know their grades before they do. If your
Right.
kid took the test today and you know the grade when they walk in the door and they haven't even looked, that's a red flag,
Yeah.
right? Because
Sure.
you're owning it, right? More than you're letting them own it. So emphasizing your was part of that, Rose. But keep
Yes.
going, keep
Yes.
going. Because
that's
I
that's
have a
right.
feeling there are people, right? Feel like there are people in two camps right now. There are people who are listening who are going, "Oh my God, maybe I'm the worst parent ever because I never did any of those things," and they're not. And there are probably
Yeah,
people who going, that's exactly what I've been doing,
Yeah.
right? So
yeah, yeah. No, and I would check up on their grades. And yes, Janice, I was that parent who knew exactly what their grade was before she even knew. So
yeah,
when I see, and I have to say this, when I see an 89% on our math test, I go, what's going on here? Are you
oh my
okay?
gosh. Wow.
It's that
Chill,
parent.
Rose. Chill.
You know, she was like, Mom, don't worry about it. It's a quiz. My
Right.
grades will increase. So this whole time I'm thinking she has to apply to Yale. She has to apply to Harvard. I want her to apply to Stanford. I want her to be that type of child,
Yeah.
and and I was monitoring every single quiz. And at one point, there was a 0 in one of her assignments, and I actually called her on it, and I go, "What is going on?" She goes, "Mom, she hasn't had a chance to look at our assignments yet."
Yeah.
And so that continued on her junior year. And by, and mind you, on top of this, I have a full-time job,
Right.
and full-time, when I mean full-time, we're talking about I have my own business, so I'm
Right.
not
You're
an
always
employee. I have many clients. At one point I had 7 clients that I was
Yeah.
trying to navigate my hours. I was working 12-hour days,
Yeah.
I was trying to deal with this. And then, Steve is very helpful. He does all the household things that we
Yep.
need to be done in the house. So it's not like I was trying to deal with that as well. We're great partners is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to
right.
say. So he has that and I have this, but he's completely different from uh how I was doing things with Maddie. He's more offhands.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's
let's be real about it. You do enough for both of you. And not to mention, like, let's rewind a little bit. You were a first responder to COVID. So don't tell me you weren't busy during COVID. I think that was probably one of the busiest times for you,
yeah,
and now
yeah.
you're micromanaging your kids on their grades and everything else. Like, what did that do to you?
It I think I had a couple of breakdown moments.
Okay.
I have a very high threshold of pain. When I say pain,
Yeah.
not physical pain, more like
Yeah.
Yeah.
stress level.
Yeah.
I'm able to adjust, and sometimes I actually surprise myself that I don't break down more often.
Yeah.
Really. Um, and I don't know, maybe that's something I can work on. But my first inkling was, my daughter needing to go to a school that I never had the chance to go to.
Yeah.
It's all more of a, and I try to analyze myself, but going back to Steve, it was sometimes the point of our contention
Yeah.
is
Mhm.
that I was too involved
Yeah.
with her. Her educational journey, I
Yeah.
guess what you call it, on top of all the other things too.
Yeah.
Um, so so that continued on her junior year.
Yeah.
Me following her grades like crazy, and her telling me and explaining to me why an 89% showed up on a report card or something. But towards her junior year, I think this was a breaking point in
Yeah.
in the path that I was going through. It was not healthy.
Mhm.
And I was told that many times by my husband, and
Yeah.
it's hard for me to let go. And
Right.
I don't know why. Maybe because I wanted the bragging rights as a parent to show that my child is exceeding in this and doing all this. I wanted her to be involved in golf. And that was the first time, because my husband is so good at golf
Yeah.
that we have a resource,
Yeah.
and I knew maybe that will be a way for her to get into an Ivy League
Make
school
her
like
stand out
Stanford.
or to, yeah. Yeah.
Golfing. Let's
She-
go.
yeah, she didn't want to do it. And what a bummer.
Yeah.
She had a good swing. But she just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, she was involved. And by junior year, I was telling her, you need to be involved in this, all this, all this. And I gave her, and she would not do it. And so that would be frustrating on my part. And I was telling Janice during that time we went out for dinner that a spring break of junior year was probably a change of our relationship, or her growing up
Oh,
and
yeah.
speaking up to me. speaking up. Um, before spring break, I was laying out, I was hearing all the parents were going on college tours, and I go, we need to do this.
Right.
We need to go to all the colleges that I think you should apply to.
Right.
And since we're in California and we want to go visit our cousin, that trip was primarily to visit our cousin, but my intentions were different. I
Right.
wanted her to go visit some of these colleges that I think that would make me a proud mom,
Right.
And I laid out, since we were going up to the Bay Area, I said, here we go. We'll go visit Stanford and we'll go visit Berkeley.
Right.
And I gotta say, this whole high school years, she always wanted to go to Berkeley. And I said, well, this is great, right?
Yeah.
This is great. We can go visit Berkeley and Stanford. And I told her I have time set up for us. I set up the whole itinerary. We go and we rented an Airbnb and we drive up there, trugged our 10 or 9-year-old then daughter along with us on her spring break.
Oh God.
You know, for Maddie.
Yeah.
So I thought.
Yeah.
So we go check in and, and usually I feel like our place that we rent kind of will set the tone of this trip.
Yeah.
And we checked into our Airbnb and it was probably the worst
Oh
Airbnb
no.
ever stayed at. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a different feel, right? So that's the tone already. We're talking about, I think there were ghosts in there.
Oh my God.
Foundation. There's a tree, there's a street that goes under the house type thing. So that might be another story, another time.
Another Halloween story.
Yeah, another Halloween story. We're talking about a crib, and I hope you don't hear babies crying in there.
Oh God.
Yeah, that type of. So basically, we wake up the next morning. We drive to Stanford, and I don't know if you guys know the area pretty well, but from Berkeley to Stanford is probably maybe a 30 to 40 miles. I can't remember now, but it took us 2 full hours to get there.
Oh no.
You're going up the 5 and all of that stuff. Like,
yeah, the traffic. Yeah. And the whole time, I was trying to make it a happy journey, and my husband was getting very, grouchy because the traffic, and towards probably the last, I think maybe 15 minutes, we were stuck in traffic. He's like, why are we doing this? He finally asked us, why are we doing this? And I don't hear anything from behind me. She's behind me, Maddie, the senior. He's like, Maddie, are you sure you want to go to this school? And so it came out. She's like, I don't want to apply to this school. And so I was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We're in this traffic for an hour and 30 minutes. And he goes, Rose, why are we even going here? She doesn't even want to apply to this school. And so that's when I get frazzled, is when we start to get into arguments in a car where I can't walk away.
Yeah.
Cool down. And then my daughter's telling him, I'm gonna apply here.
You're the enemy at this point.
Yes. So I was just like, oh my gosh. And we'll go, what do we do? She doesn't want to apply here, but I want her to go. And I go, well, you know what? I go, just keep your minds open. We go there, we park, pay about $20 for parking because we want to go on this college tour. And while I'm parking, they get out of the car and they go wait there. They're all talking, by the way. I don't think my 10-year-old or 9-year-old at that time is involved in that discussion. It's just, my husband and Maddie. And so I'm paying for the parking. I come back and he's like, Rose, she doesn't even want to go on this tour. Why are we here? And I get really angry. I said, then let's go the F home.
Yeah. You can say,
I don't
Can I
think
say that here?
yes, you can. Go the fuck
I
home.
don't think I've ever heard Rose say it. Go, say it now. Say it.
Not in my kids. I go, let's go the fuck home then. I was just like, and I go to the car. They're talking out there and they come in and I was just livid. I was so angry that we drove 2 hours, to Stanford.
The tour? Just do the freaking tour. Who cares?
Didn't even do that. I said that. She just refused. Maddie just refused. And of course, Steve is like, let's go then. And I was pissed off because I thought I put in all this work for you. You
Right.
don't appreciate it. And, you know, and then this whole mommy thing came out, like, I do so much for you guys.
Right.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, the gaslighting of the children. How dare you?
Yes.
I think we've all
It
been
was
there.
terrible. Believe me, they could feel my devil horns coming out, just the fire coming out in the car. It was a heated moment in there, but when I say heated, it was pure silence. Driving 2 hours back
Wow.
to Berkeley.
Nothing? No.
So that's when they know I'm mad.
The
And
radio
my
goes
whole-
off. Yeah.
The radio was off. It was pure silence. The whole 2 hours we were going back, right? And then we go back to the Airbnb. You know, we were supposed to visit our cousin, but unfortunately, my cousin at the time, but like literally a day before, said I have COVID.
Oh no.
So
Oh no.
we didn't even go visit her anyways. And you know, that whole day was supposed to be for Stanford. The next day was supposed to be for Berkeley. So you know, we enter the house in and she goes to her room. And this is where I had that discussion with her. I go into her room. Basically, I've never had a conversation like this with her before. And I said, you know, everything that I do is for you. And she basically finally opened up and she's like, I don't want to apply there. And you assumed that I wanted to apply there. And every time I told you I don't want to go to Stanford, you pushed it on me.
Right.
And she's like, everything that you have asked me to do since then, like in the past, I've agreed to this. But, you know, basically, you need to let me do what I need to do. And we have a rule between me and my husband is that when we're disciplining, only one does it. So
Yeah.
I can't jump in when
Yeah.
he's, you know, disciplining the kids, even though I really want to, or vice versa. And this is the first time he's actually jumped in.
Oh, wow.
I'm disciplining. And he said, she told you many times, Rose, that she did not want to apply to Stanford, but yet you're forcing this on her. You need to let her go and let her do what she needs to do. And then that's when I started breaking down. That was one of my, you know, breakdown moments that my children never see. And I started to cry. I basically started to cry and I said, I'm done. I am done doing everything for you. I am done checking up on your grades. I go, you are on your own. I go, if you want to go visit colleges, you go do it. And that's where Steve stepped in. He's like, I will take you.
Yeah,
I said, because
out there, time out. I know. I'm like,
he's like, I'll take you, because he knew he never saw me this way.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
were
He
like super emotional.
never seen me emotional like this to my kids, in front of my kids. And I said,
Yeah.
I'm done. You are on your own. Done. Right? So I think she kind of felt it, obviously, or I couldn't read her at that time because she's always been quiet, right? And so that was that turning point of this whole college journey.
Yeah.
Um, and I said, I am never doing anything for you again. And from there, I have not. When she studied for the ACTs, you know, uh, you know, mind you, they do have to take their SATs or ACTs beforehand. And I did ask
Yeah.
her, do you need to take classes for those? And she said no. She refused to take classes to increase whatever grade she did. So I backed off and I said, okay, so that was the hardest part, was just backing off and forcing her to take these classes to increase her ACT grade, her test scores.
Yeah.
So from there, I didn't even know what colleges she applied to. She did everything on her own. I asked her if she needs to take some classes over the summer. I wanted her to take your classes, Janice, but we actually traveled a lot, so
Yeah.
we couldn't do it. But she didn't want to,
Yeah.
and I said, okay, how do I walk her through this journey without doing everything for her? I would ask her, do you need help or assistance on me? She did everything on her own.
Good for
She
her.
So
looked at
I want to stop you right there for a
uh-huh,
second though, because you had this big blow up, right?
Right.
yeah,
Spring break for junior year, where you got into that really hyper emotional phase, state that every single one of us can relate to 100%. And in
yeah,
that moment, it was, I'm never doing anything for you again. But what you're talking about now is not the anger coming through
Right.
anymore. This is like, that was like the point at which you kind of put that on the table. Almost like, it almost sounds like an ultimatum, like, I'm never going to do anything again if you're going to
yeah,
Very cool. Yeah.
but now it's
yeah,
transition, right? Now it sounds like,
yeah,
so what did you learn from that moment? Because it sounds like you learned some things that made you
Right.
kind of go,
yeah.
oh, hold on, I gotta step back. What did you learn from that?
Yeah, okay, so I have to say that I'm not a professional. I don't want to tell every one of your listeners that you need to do what I'm doing. It's just
Yeah,
coming from my own experience, and
absolutely.
children are different, right?
Yep.
I think my second one will be different. So she's going to need a little bit of coaching. But Maddie, I've helped her through this process, or I helped her. But this was a moment where I learned that if I don't back off now, we're talking about that millisecond in that room at the worst Airbnb place that I stayed in, it would have ruined our relationship.
There we go.
Right.
I think she would just not open those doors of communication with me anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
And this was literally a fork in the road
yeah,
with us.
yeah,
So instead of being that nagging, forceful mom, I really needed to step away and let her be that person she needed to become, right?
yeah,
Um, whether it be now or later down the road when she goes off to college,
yeah,
I need, and it was the right move. And Steve has been really, really helpful with me trying to navigate that, because
yeah,
I've completely let go. She needs to be an adult. This is
yeah,
where it started. This
Yes.
is where it started. So yes, so she basically looked at all the colleges that she went through. She knew she needed to pick three categories of colleges: her
yeah,
safety,
yeah.
her reach, and what was the other one? I don't even know
Like
what
her choice, like her first choices,
her
like the place.
choice.
Yeah,
Right. Choice, reach, and safety. And um I do check in with her and ask her, how's it going? And so she did everything on her own. And that is what I call the proud moment
Yeah.
as a mom, you know, because, even applying for her driver's license, Steve told me, let her do it,
Yep.
because if she does not learn how to do it on her own, she
We'll never
can't
do it.
survive out there.
Right.
That's right.
And yeah, and the thing is, I did it all on my own when I was that young, actually,
But you
even
figured
Yeah,
younger.
it out. You figured it out.
I
that's right.
figured it out. And there was mistakes that I had
Yep.
along the way, but those were learning moments.
Yep.
And so, that's me learning as a person, as a mom, that
Well,
I
That's right.
needed that.
yeah, but as mothers, we want to not let our kids go through the same pain and mistakes or whatever you want to call them as we did, right? So your
Yes, right.
intention, what I'm hearing is your intentions were all good. It's just that we
Yeah,
were, at the moment, you didn't know you were robbing her of that experience. And that's where we learn
yeah,
our lessons and gain the experience and do all those things. And,
yeah.
I I had a big realization yesterday when I was doing a workshop for a bunch of young ladies that we were talking about trauma and different things and boundaries and stuff like that. And I realized that I became, because we want to become the better version of, or offer better things to our kids or do the things that our parents didn't do. And I just realized, I was like, I became the mom that I always wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I became the mom that I always wanted, the one that would listen, the one that would accept me for who I was, not freak out about silly things and do those things. And it sounded like you were portraying the parents you wanted, but didn't
Yeah.
realize your daughter didn't need that.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me if you like bring it
That's
back around.
right. Yeah, you're so right. So I do think about those moments, about when my parents raised me. I think what they did was probably the best thing. Like,
Yeah,
hands off,
yeah,
hands completely off. I mean, they were there financially. Oh, or maybe even not. Like, we grew up with little money, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, I was only able to apply to two colleges in San Diego.
right,
Two.
Mhm.
right,
Because of the application fees.
Yeah.
right.
I got rejected to one. I was forced to go to the other one.
Yeah.
So, you know, yes, you're right. But there was a good reason for it, because
Oh,
as
yeah,
an adult, you need to be able to navigate the world by
absolutely.
yourself,
Yep.
Well,
you
and
know?
I think it's that whole, like, as a parent, right? Like, being transparent with your kids, right? So like, for very different reasons, my parents were hands off. Nobody in my family had ever gone to college before. Nobody would have
Right.
known
Me
how to
too.
help me figure that
Mhm.
out, right?
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
relied on, teachers and counselors and people at school. But like you said, Rose, right? I just did it and I was capable of doing it. And so it makes me think of, two things. One is the number of times I've said to parents, listen, if your kid can't navigate that process, they're not ready for college, right?
Right.
And I know it's hard because,
exactly.
to your point, like you said, maybe I wanted her to go to Stanford or, Harvard or where Yale for bragging rights. But I also know you well enough to know that a large part of my guess is why you wanted her to go to those schools is because we attach this idea that if they go there, they're going to be okay. If they
Right.
go there, they're going to be around
Yes,
that we know is going to lead to a thriving, life
Sure.
down the road, et cetera, which, by the way, not guaranteed even when you go to those
not
schools.
guaranteed.
Not even
But
close.
we have these ideas in our head, right, that have been put there
Yeah,
by all the things that we're surrounded by. So for me, it's always been like, if your kid can't even navigate that process, doesn't mean like you're doing a great job because you're saying, do you need anything? Do you need help? Doesn't mean you don't offer help, but if you don't let them take the lead and organize and track and figure out where to go to apply and do all those things, they're not ready to go off and live by themselves at college. So that's the
yeah,
first thing. The second
yeah.
thing is, when I was still a principal, there was a group of young men that I had worked with since middle school, and as they got through every year, their parents, it was a club almost, but their parents would hold like a little award assembly just for them, going from year to year to year. And it was a group for African American boys, right? And it was really designed
Uh,
to break some of the stereotypes around African American boys, especially as they navigate middle school into high school, et cetera. So their junior year award ceremony, their parents invited me back to be the speaker or what have you. And the message that I gave it was for both the young men and their parents, but it was mostly for the parents. And I said, listen, this is a moment for you to check yourself. Because if you, and I said some of the same things I've said here today, if you're checking their grades first, if you're this, if you're that, in other words, if you're being this hands-on, then anything they achieve between now and graduation is yours, not theirs.
Yeah.
So now you're consistently sending the message, by the way, that I don't think you can do it. Every time you do it for them, you are telling them it's because you believe they cannot do it, period. That is the message that's being sent. But also this idea that like all the awards that they might, earn, the scholarships that they might get, those won't be theirs. They'll be yours. So if this is the time to let them be who they are and get to where they're going to go as a result of who they are, not because of who you are. So you had, you went about that in such a hard way, but thank God you had the realization when you did, because not every parent does. Right. And some of them do the pushing and the prodding and the shoving all the way through.
Even into adulthood. So applause, Rose, applause.
Amen.
Good.
Amen.
Good. And
exactly
you know what? Thank your husband too, because he was a huge, and what a great partner to actually be able to, despite your rules, I use air quotes, your rules of don't get involved. This was something, it was more than just discipline. It was her future, and he's like, okay, we need to slow down. And what a great partner to be able to do that and move through it and be supportive to both you and your daughter and help navigate that. So I give, is it Steven?
It's Steve.
Give Steve a high five for me. So
Steve got a shout out on our podcast.
Yeah, Steve got a shout out. You're gonna be like, damn it, I went on and you got a shout out. No, you get a shout out too, Rose.
So as I'm looking at our time here, Rose. So I think the final piece here is you have Emily, who's 10. She's coming up, right behind. She's, you backed us all the way up to 7th grade in Maddie, where you started to see the habits that you were building and end up escalating, right? Spring of her junior year. So, and I know you already said, like, Emily's going to need a little coaching, but I find that an interesting comment at 10, when you said she still had so much road ahead of her. So what are you going to be thoughtful about to ensure that you don't end up in the same space? Because just because you figured it out doesn't mean that with the next kid you won't revert back.
Do it again.
I mean, I just have to remember that breakdown that I had. Every time and it's starting, like, I ask her, are you okay with school? She's okay, then we're fine. That's one thing, that I have to just remember, that argument, because that was really sad for me. But
sometimes honestly, to get to the best place, we have to go through the hardest spots, right? Like that. Usually if it's uneventful and there's no hardship and there's no whatever, we're probably not in the best place we could be, right? And I have to remind myself of that, because I'm somebody who I know I actively avoid conflict, right? And sometimes that's good, and it's because I have a skill set to navigate conflict, but sometimes it's just because I'm avoiding conflict, and I get that, right? So sometimes the conflict and the breakdown, and as hard as it is in the moment, is the thing that leads you to just the beautiful things. And you've created this space now where you and Maddie, like you said, you have a completely different relationship.
Yeah, we do. And now, wherever she wants to go, I'll even take her on a trip to do college.
Oh my God, look at you.
Stop it. We know
because it could just be the two of us, and just have fun.
Girls trip.
Exactly.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your story, Rose, and being a super fan of dumpster diving with Janice and Jane. That makes me happy. Boop, boop.
Amen.
But, I love the fact that you're thinking forward with Maddie, and is that the 10-year-old Maddie?
Maddie, Emily. Emily.
So, but just think about it. She's 10, so she definitely doesn't know how to apply for college yet. So she'll.
No, doesn't. And I will be part of that process. I have to say, I'm a lot happier now. Just
good.
Yay! Yeah, I've thrown that, that task out of my list. Amazing. And just concentrate on
now you can pour all your energy into your cricket and making cool things.
Yes. To focus on. There you go.
I
we appreciate you coming on and sharing time with us and being a fan of our show. Please, tell all your friends that you're on the podcast. You know,
Oh,
get
I
them
know, I
listening.
know.
Yeah.
As soon as you send me the link, I'm posting on my page.
You're
so.
amazing.
There we
You're
go.
amazing. Thank you so much, Rose. Love you.
Yes, thank you
Love
so
you.
much. All right, guys, we'll see you soon.
All
Bye.
right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.